Let me start off by saying my son, Adam, is 22 years old. Back when my ex-wife, Tori, and I were trying for kids, we found out that I was infertile. We decided we'd adopt, then about 4 months later my ex-wife is pregnant. I was thrilled because I thought maybe the doctor made a mistake. No, I was wrong. My ex-wife cheated on me and I didn't find out until 20 years later. Tori told me 2 years ago that she cheated on me. And we did a paternity test to make sure, and well, he's not my biological son. My ex and I divorced a few weeks later. Ever since my son found out the truth, he wanted to meet his biological father. He did, and they started to become really close. It hurt me much more than I thought it would. He's an adult, he can make his own decisions, but it hurt really bad. They started to bond really well, and all of a sudden Adam became really distant from me. It's been like this for almost a year and a half. I tried to text him to make plans for dinner and he said he's busy with Chris, biological father. I tried numerous times to connect with him by calling and texting, but he never made plans aside from like a meal every other month. We used to do stuff every other week, but it's been completely different since he found out about Chris. I couldn't stand it. My son, who I raised since he was a baby, treated me like I didn't matter. Anytime we'd actually have plans, he would still be cold and distant. What I mean by that is became much more defensive of his personal life. I'd ask him how classes or friends were and he'd just say they were fine but never go deeper than that. He also changed his major from econ to computer science and didn't even mention it to me until a year later. I told him how much he was hurting me because of how distant he was and he apologized and said he'd do better. He never did. I told him numerous times and he never changed. He was still distant. What was the final straw for me was the phone conversation I had with him last week. He said he was going to change his last name to Chris because he liked it so much and because they were close. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told him this. I can't believe you are going to do this. That's really disappointing to me. If you decide to change your last name, go ahead, but if you do that, then I'm no longer your father and I don't want to be involved in your life. He hung up on me. I didn't even bother reaching out because I know he wouldn't respond. I stand by what I said. I meant every word and still do. The last name change to me means he no longer views me as a father and views Chris as his, despite the fact he's 22. My family told me I'm being unreasonable, meanwhile my best friends think it's reasonable. After I found out about Chris, I took a couple of days and didn't speak to my ex-wife or Adam. They didn't contact me. I didn't contact them. I needed a break. A lot of you are asking for a deeper meaning behind this, and I think I finally figured out why he's been so cold. A few months before my wife told us the truth, we were in a very long argument. His grandma, my mother, left a big inheritance for him that I am fully in charge of. Enough to pay for college and have enough wiggle room to not stress all the time about it. After a semester of university, he started dating this girl. He was head over heels in love with her. I never met the girl, so I have zero clue how she felt about the relationship. Suddenly, after a few months of dating, Adam asked me for about $3,000 to be deposited into his account from the inheritance. I already paid for the semester, so this was odd to me. I asked Adam why he needed the money. He said his girlfriend was having trouble paying for her tuition and asked my son to help. I told him no because it seemed to me that she was treating him like a piggy bank. He spent over $1,000 on her in just under a few months. He would constantly talk about how he loved going shopping with her so he could buy her things. To me, she was just after my son's inheritance, and I was right. What I said to him was basically this: Adam, you haven't been dating this girl for very long at all, and for me to give you that much money just to spend on her after a few months doesn't sit well with me. That's the money your grandmother left you for your college career, not hers. If you two were more serious, then I would think about it, but I'm not giving you that much money to just give your girlfriend. Turns out my guess was right, and she was after his money. They broke up shortly after and have had an on-again, off-again relationship ever since. He was upset with me, but he eventually got over it after a few months. Then we found out about my ex's affair. I don't know if that's the real reason he's so cold. That was a huge argument that went on for weeks until she left him. My brother-in-law has always been a bit of a ruckus. Just a very jolly guy, used to be a hard-partied when I first knew him, but not so much now. I mean, he still likes to drink and he smokes weed, but nothing compared to how he used to be. He stays in the basement apartment, which is a full apartment, separate from ours, with a kitchen and bathroom etc. In our house ever since he lost his apartment. He has never really been able to keep a good job, no college education, and also ADHD. And we live in NYC, so affording rent is impossibly hard lately. This was supposed to be a temporary thing for him, out of desperation because he lost his apartment. I should say that he has gone through multiple phases of depression from just living hard much of his life. I remember seeing him when he was in his 20s and he was just a damn mess. Living in shit apartments and working shit jobs, and I remember he was super depressed, like, you know, that kind of depressed. For a bit around a decade ago because of how awful his life was. And it was awful. I won't sugarcoat it. He was getting mugged in his area constantly. His apartment was horribly small and he worked horribly long hours. His ex-wife was awful to him and cheated on him. But in the past 2 months that he has been here, he's been an absolute joy. To both me and my wife and also our kids. We all love him so much. He clearly loves the basement, it's even bigger than his old apartment, and just in general it's in a much better location. He has said, multiple times, how much he loves it at our place. He also is just a great guy to have around. He is a blast with our kids and he always cooks food for us and is just a general great, funny, charismatic guy. He got a new job, working 60 hours a week at a shit job. And now he wants to move out to his friend's place all the way in Coney Island where he would be spending half of his paycheck on rent. At first, we were like, okay, well, this was our agreement, he was eventually gonna leave. But then we kinda had a family meeting and realized, hey, we want him here. I don't even care if he pays nothing in rent, he's great to have around. Just to be clear though, we did tell him he would have to pay something a month, a number we haven't decided yet. When we told him this, he kind of thought it was a joke, but then he agreed. He was very happy about it, and we were too, and we were kind of thinking like, he's a member of our house now, you know? But then he changed his mind suddenly, and was saying how he doesn't want to be a freeloader and that he thinks we are just allowing him to stay because we feel bad for him. He really will not listen to us at all when we say that we actually want him to stay. Even our kids, teens, have tried getting him to stay and he just won't accept it. Every time we bring it up to him he sort of does this pity thing where he's like, come on, I know you think I'm a loser. I'm not gonna mooch off of you guys or something along those lines. It's been around 2 weeks, and he just kind of feels bad about it. It is absolutely a pride thing for him. He technically plans on moving out in the next few weeks. But we really want him to stay. And we know that he would love to stay. I feel like there is really no chance this is some kind of deep down he hates it here kind of situation. This is 100% a pride thing for him. Background about my sister. 2 years ago, my sister was killed in a car accident. She was riding with a friend to the mall, the friend's parent was driving. And teenage boy plowed through a red light while texting on his phone and hit the car my sister, Carrie, was in. Carrie was killed instantly and her friend, June, was in a coma for 3 weeks before her parents took her off life support. When Carrie passed I was devastated and angry and just not in a good place. Carrie and I had been extremely close. Despite a 7-year age gap between us, we enjoyed a lot of the same shows, we went to concerts together. We volunteered together, and I took it upon myself to guide Carrie like any big sister would do. Our parents were extremely busy with work most days and Carrie and I would often cook together and do crafts when we weren't too busy with school work. Carrie wanted to be a NICU nurse when she grew up and I helped her find a volunteer position at a local hospital to help get her gain some experience being around patients. In short, Carrie was my sister and best friend and when she passed, I was a mess. The last craft Carrie and I made together was a set of candles. We bought the wax at a local craft store and we both made each other a candle and decorated the jar it was in. That was the day before she was killed. At her funeral, Carrie was buried with the candle I made her. The candle Carrie made me sits on my desk next to my favorite picture of her and I together at the beach. Or it did, until last week. Background about my boyfriend. I met my boyfriend about 1.5 years ago, about 6 months after Carrie passed. I wasn't looking for a relationship, I was still grieving my sister's death. But Eugene came along and it was love at first sight. He was extremely supportive, let me cry on him when I needed to, didn't push me into getting over grieving or anything. He was extremely gentleman about everything and very, very patient. After 6 months of seeing each other pretty regularly, we made it official. Eugene came into my life at a very low point and he has always been very respectful of sentiments I keep from my sister. Never asking me to take them down, always giving me space when I needed to cry. Eugene, along with most, if not all, of my friends and family know about Carrie's candle. There was a point after she died where I would take the candle with me everywhere out of fear that someone might light it, or steal it. Or who knows what. The point is, that candle was and still is a very important part of my life and something that my sister made for me and me alone. When Eugene and I moved in together about 4 months ago, I packed away most of the reminders of my sister and put out the candle and picture on my desk. I felt that this was a huge step because when I'd lived just by myself I had pictures everywhere and a few knickknacks laying around from my sister. I wanted to make Eugene and I's home our home with just a small part of my sister there. Eugene understood and was very supportive. Last week, we had a massive winter storm that knocked out power. We didn't have power for 3+ days. The power was knocked out at Eugene and I's house while I was at work, which did not lose power. Eugene texted me that he was going to light some candles and try and get a generator, so we could have some for of power or at least be able to charge our phones / use lights / etc. Now, we have probably 30+ candles in our house. I am a huge fan of sales and when Bath & Body Works has a candle sale, I like to stock up and get a range of scents. We have candles scattered all over our house. In the room where my desk is, there are no candles aside from the one Carrie made me. None at all, and there never has been. This room is also downstairs, where Eugene doesn't spend a lot of time, his desk is upstairs. When I arrived home from work last week, I noticed a bunch of candles burning in our living room, safely. Always monitored and not near anything that could ignite. One of these candles was the candle that Carrie had made me. I burst into tears and when Eugene heard me crying he came out from the bedroom, where he was lighting more candles, and asked what was wrong. I was a wreck and couldn't get any words out. When he tried to calm me down, I shoved past him and locked myself in the room where my desk was and just cried. I don't know how he could be so stupid. He knew and I thought he understood how sentimental the candle was and how much I cherished having a candle that my now deceased sister had spent time making with me just a day before she was killed. I haven't been able to speak to Eugene since it happened, Tuesday of last week. He has tried to explain why he did it, because he needed candles to be able to see, but I just can't wrap my head around it. He hadn't gotten into the large candle stash I have upstairs right by the living room where Carrie's candle was, but went downstairs, out of the way to grab the most sentimental, cherished item I have. The candle was burning most of the day while I was at work and is now melted and pretty much gone. I do still have the jar it was in, but I can't look at it without bursting into tears. Eugene says it was an accident, but I just don't believe that. He said he was getting around to lighting the candle surplus we have upstairs, but just hadn't gotten there yet. After being home 6 hours alone with no power. I am heartbroken and feel like this is a major slap in the face. I feel disrespected. I feel like he disrespected my sister. I just don't know what to do. I don't feel like I can forgive him for this. I got my son a 7K motorcycle for his 18th birthday this past June. My son is obsessed with automobile and loves motorcycles. In his room he has plenty of models and posters of motorcycles of all types. His bio dad passed away when he was just 12, now I'm married to my current husband and he has kids of his own. My husband has always been against my son's interest in motorcycles. He thinks I'm encouraging him to be reckless, distracting him from school and by extension his future, and spoiling him and blowing away money by spending 7K on a motorcycle. This caused some tension between him and my son, so I told him to stop complaining about it. Around 2 weeks ago, my son's motorcycle went missing. We opened a police report but nothing came out of it. It just disappeared. My husband had a smirk on his face the entire time, just walking around saying, "I told you so. You just wasted your money." This was unbearable to hear, to be quite honest. My mother-in-law visited few days ago. She was talking about the other house my husband owns and mentioned seeing a motorcycle. One that's similar to the one that we lost in my husband's carriage while she was cleaning it. She goes to clean that house weekly even though it's empty. My husband plans on giving it to his kids as inheritance. I was puzzled. I asked if she was certain, but she showed me a photo she took of it which confirmed that it was indeed my son's motorcycle. I immediately rushed to call my husband and confront him about it. He admitted that he took and hid the motorcycle in his garage as a last resort after me and his stepson kept brushing him, and his thoughts off about the $7,000 being spent on something unnecessary and that could cause issues. I blew up at him demanding he return it. He refused and told me he had been considering selling it and giving the money back to me so I could use it wisely this time. I told him I was serious and that I'd call the police. He literally said, "This is a family matter and cops can't do shit about it." I had enough. I called the cops soon as I ended the call with him. The motorcycle was found and returned. But my husband had to be taken in since there was an open file about the motorcycles going missing. He was let go eventually, but he was livid with me. He came home yelling about how awful what I did was and how crazy my behavior was. I refused to engage in the argument, but he told his entire family about it and they judged me for calling the police on my own husband, even though I already asked him to return it. He said he was just looking out for my son and that one day we'll realize that he was right, but only when it's too late. My son isn't speaking to me or my husband. I feel horrible about the whole situation and am starting to think I handled this the wrong way.